Welcome to a new episode of The Good Talk. Today I'm joined with Christopher Sheffield, a filmmaker and a longtime friend. Sheffield, welcome to the studio. What do you think of the studio, man?
This studio is dope. This is really, really cool. I love the lighting. I love the setup. Cinematographer approved. This whole
yes,
setup. Yeah.
We got a cinematographer approved, and he's a legit cinematographer. And we're gonna get into everything because, dude, we've known each other for a decade.
Yeah.
Can you believe that?
I can.
A decade, over 10 years, we have known each other. You know, obviously spread apart here and there.
Yeah.
But we are both in LA now, and we've been in LA for a long time now. So
yeah.
I'm gonna let you go ahead and do an intro about yourself. Tell the people who you are, what you do.
Christopher Sheffield. I'm a writer, director, producer, cinematographer. The Filmmaker is a good bubble for all that. I'm a filmmaker living in Los Angeles, California. That is all I do for work, and that is all I have done since I graduated. So just so you know, you can be a living and working artist. It's a real job.
Yes, it is, and I think that's what we both are.
Yeah.
And we went to school together, so I want to get into our history and how we met, basically. But let's go back to basically your childhood and how you even got into filmmaking. So let's go. Where are you from?
So I had a Marine father, so any like military kids can identify, like you move around a lot as a kid. So I was like born in Pennsylvania. I have no idea what Pennsylvania is even like. We moved away when I was like 2. Did a little bit of growing up in Texas in a spot called Fort Worth, and then moved from there to Yuma, Arizona, where the military base was. And then I did most of my significant growing in Arizona. So I could probably just say I'm from Arizona because that's like where most of my development happened.
Okay, so how old were you when you moved to Arizona?
I think I was 10 when I moved to Yuma.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Yuma, and then you grew up in Yuma.
Yeah, I grew up in Yuma, did high school all through Yuma, and then moved to Phoenix as soon as I could because I really wanted to get out of the small town. So I was like 16 when I moved, like right when I graduated. It was like 2 weeks off and then boom, straight to Phoenix to go to Collins.
So you graduated at 16?
Yeah.
And then you went to Phoenix?
Yeah.
At what point did you realize like film was something you wanted to pursue?
So I always wanted to do this. So when I was really young, I think I was maybe like 11 or 12, maybe like 12 years old. My mom had a coworker who had a garage sale, and she bought these 2 video cameras. And they were like old DV tape cameras, and one of them could record and one of them could play back. And that because they were like the other functions were broken. So I would like take them and I would like film with one, and then I had to pop it out and put in the other one to like watch it and see what I did. But I started out doing movies of like just my toys, like doing little movies with my action figures, just alone in my room. And then that graduated to including my friends in that process. We would make movies together with their action figures. And then as we got older, we started being in front of the camera. And then we started doing like backyard wrestling stuff. Like we had all our characters. We would shoot our like pay-per-views. And you've actually been to the house that I grew up in Yuma. So we were like in those horse stalls, just like wrestling and horse shit and stuff. And then that turned into doing skits because at that time Jackass became a thing. So everybody's like trying to do like funny skits and stuff with their cameras. And then by the time I graduated, you had another guest on here that had a similar story where I thought that because my sister and I were academically kind of similar, I thought that I was going to follow her route and go to ASU, get like a bachelor's in like English literature or something, maybe teach, I don't know. But then my brother decided to take a wild swing at life and decided to go to school for video game design. And that like woke something up in me because I was like, wait, like I loved making movies, but I never thought that could be a job. And when I saw him really like going for it with something that was just kind of out of left field, I was like, you know what, I think I'm going to take a swing at making movies for a living. So then I decided to follow in his footsteps and go to the same technical institute for film.
Okay, wow. So your love for film started just as a young kid, basically. Was there a film or something you watched that basically kind of triggered that?
I think my parents, for whatever reason, like my dad was always really strict, but for whatever reason, when it came to like the media that we consumed, they were really open-minded about it. Like my brother and I were watching mature films at a very young age, and they kind of just told us like, if you guys can be mature about it, you can watch it. So like some of my like the early films that I love, like Bram Stoker's Dracula, that movie is like almost like a giant gothic orgy. And then Starship Troopers, that movie is packed full of violence. And it's like these were some movies that I really, really loved as a kid. The Conan films. I was just like fascinated with those movies, and maybe because I was also watching like kid movies and cartoons and stuff. I wasn't like a sociopath, but I think that being given early access to like a broader spectrum of storytelling just kind of always had my imagination working. And just based on like my brain chemistry, I just happen to have a stronger tilt towards that than I do towards like mathematics and like pragmatism. I lean more towards imagination. So I think storytelling was always the goal. And then as soon as I got cameras in my hands, like it was done. Like that was going to be my medium.
So you realized you wanted to go to film school, and then how did you find Collins?
Collins actually found me. So I tried to go to Scottsdale Community College because that was the one that I could find online. And this is like, it's not exactly like early days for the internet, but the internet wasn't quite as sharpened as it is these days. Like you couldn't go on a website and talk to somebody immediately. You still had to find a phone number and then do it the old school way. And for whatever reason, I couldn't get a hold of Scottsdale Community College. Side note, they are the better school. It would have been great if I'd gone there, but I couldn't get a hold of them. And then one day Collins, because Collins, the school that we went to was a for-profit school. They were very greedy. So they wanted us. So they actually came to my high school and did like a presentation. And I think that's where my brother first heard of them. And then they also came through my classroom, and I asked the guy if they did film. And he was like, yeah, absolutely. And he gave me a pamphlet. And then I was like, okay, well, if Nick's already going there, then it'll be easier for me to sell that to my parents that I also want to go there, because like, oh yeah, we'll be there together.
Wow. So they came to you, literally. They found you.
Yeah, they came to find. I mean, if not them, I would have maybe gone to ASU or something. But yeah, that's the route I ended up going.
Yeah. So film school, man. What year did you go to film school? Because we were, I think, like a year or 2 years apart.
Yeah, it was an accelerated program. So I think the whole program was only like 2.5 years or something like that. So I was only like a year above you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So what year did you start Collins?
I don't remember.
Because I started maybe 2008. Because I started 2009. Because also me, as soon as I graduated high school, I left and went straight to college. Yeah. 2009.
Yeah,
so maybe
your memory is as good on that. Then.
So maybe 2008.
Yeah.
So how let's talk about college, man, because that's where we met, right? And Tempe, Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, we both went to the same school, and we're both studying film. And yeah, you were like a year ahead of me. So tell me, how was your experience with film school?
So when I because of my dad's background as like a, very like pragmatic Marine, like it was really hard to sell to him that like something like film could be a real job. So when I left for school, I already had this like big chip on my shoulder that I'm like, I need to prove to him that this is a real thing and that I'm serious. Always looking for dad's approval. So I went hard at film school. Like I tried to read all my books before like the classes started. I like knew that I wanted to be like the best that I could in the class and try to just like be a leader and get projects going and stuff. And, as a young guy, I didn't know anything. But at the time, Robert Rodriguez was like big for being like the kind of king of indie film. And he had his book out, and it was like, everybody needs to go make movies on the weekends with their friends. So we really tried to embody that. And we tried to just make, short films all the time, whether they were like goofy or whatever. And that was actually the reason that I knew about you, was because you kind of did a similar thing where there was like a group of people in your class that were serious, and you guys were always making films. And so I found out about you from watching like stuff on YouTube I was like, oh, these guys go to Collins too. And it was like stuff that you were acting in a bunch. And they were dope. Your guys' stuff was dope. I was like, you guys were doing a bunch of fight scenes. You had Miguel like always trying to like copy whatever like Christopher Nolan had just done. Yeah, it was dope.
It was cool going to that school, because everyone that was in that school were basically nerds, right? Yeah. We're nerds, man. We're
huge nerds.
But everyone that was going in that school were there because they wanted to be filmmakers, and they were passionate about it, right? Yeah. So it was great to be around around those people that are passionate and have the same passion as you do.
Yeah.
So
I will say, I think the best thing that film school ever offered me was just giving me a room full of people who also wanted to do it. Because at the end of the day, film is a team sport. Like you can't really do very much by yourself. Yeah. But if you get a community, you get a team of people, you can do incredible stuff. Not that I ever did anything incredible in film school. I'm sure my work is terrible. But it was just the opportunity to go out and do it again and again and again and get bad at it and get good at it and all that stuff.
Yeah, everything we did too was terrible looking back now at it. But I don't regret going to film school, man, because I did learn a lot, and meeting different people within the same mindset. It was a great experience, and I don't regret it. But do you think going to film school like now in this modern day is important? And would you recommend that to a young up and coming like filmmaker?
It kind of depends, I think, on how you learn. So I happen to be a hands-on learner. So film school was cool for me because I could be around people doing it. But when I graduated, I went into shooting stuff in Phoenix for a couple years, and then I moved to LA, and we can get to that. But like after a year of being in LA, even as a PA, I was like, damn, I could go back and teach a lot of those classes a lot better than I was taught. And so like, because you realize like teachers only know as much as they know before they start teaching again, you know, and they rarely, once they become professors, they rarely go back out into the world and learn. And with something like film, it's something that's always growing, and you have to kind of be engaging with it to get better at it. So if you're somebody who needs a structure and needs a textbook to learn things, then film school is really valuable to you. But if you're somebody who needs like hands-on experience, like save your money, get good at Googling things, watch YouTube videos, and go get a job as a PA, because then you'll be paid to learn, and start doing it that way, like from the ground up.
Yeah, that's some great advice, and I agree with you there too. So when you started going to film school, what was the thing you wanted to do? Like, why did you go to film school? Was there like a specific role that you wanted to like be, like a DP, director, writer?
All I wanted to do was write and direct. But what I didn't want was there to be any kind of barrier to entry for me. Like I didn't want to, like if I wanted to direct something, I didn't want to have to go find my DP and see if they're interested, and then go rent a camera and all that stuff. Like I wanted to have as much of that stuff local to myself, so that if I wanted to shoot, I could just stand up and shoot. So it was important to me to learn how to DP so that I could shoot my own projects, which is what I did for most of my early career. Most of my early features, I was DPing, and even like up into some of the last ones, still DPing my own features. Just because I just didn't want there to be anything in the way to slow me down. And the school that we went to actually was really weird about equipment. So I got there thinking I was going to have access to everything. And they were like, nah, dog, only during the hours of school. Otherwise, you guys can't have anything. And like, outside of school is where I was going to do most of my important learning, because that's where I'd be shooting with friends. So my mom, bless her heart, for the second time in my life, went ham on a credit card and got me a camera. It was an old like Canon XH-A1S or something like that. But it was like another DV camera. And that was what I shot most of my short films on outside of class. And I would ended up even bringing it to school and like shooting school projects with it, because it was, the best camera is always the one that you get good with, is the one that's in your hands. So, yeah.
And what was your strongest skill when you were like in film school? Like you said, you DP'd a lot of your projects.
Yeah.
But what do you think what's your strongest thing?
My strongest thing, I don't know that I was very good at lighting back then. I think my strongest thing was that I would hyper fixate on the magic tricks. So like, for instance, like shooting action, like I wanted to know how it was done and how to frame the camera and like how to sell the hits and stuff like that. So I would hyper fixate on that, or like horror, like what is the editing trick that's going to make something scary? And so I would focus on those kind of processes. And every time I would make a short film, I would be practicing like another one of those, basically. Yeah, I didn't get good at lighting, I think, until I moved out here and started engaging with like DPs that really knew what they were doing, because we didn't have like wonderful instruction at our school. So.
Well, I think that one of your strongest skills that I've always like admired and looked up to is like your storytelling and your writing.
Oh, thank you, man.
Yeah, man. I think your stories are incredible. Like your films, like they're just so good. And that's something that I've never really been good at, like writing or storytelling. The way you do it, it's incredible. So that's something I've always admired. So
thank you.
I love it. But what do you think is your weakest link as far as like skill goes, and that you've been trying to work on to improve?
I mean, it's funny because I would say like writing's a big one that I'm always, I do it a lot, and I'm always very critical of what I'm writing and whether or not I'm coasting by on stuff. So the writing is the one thing that I'm trying to get really, really good at. But I think I'm not good at being a gearhead, which can be difficult in a professional industry. Like I don't learn the equipment, like the names and the technical elements, I think, as much as I could or should. It just takes a little bit more study. I think that's like the math side of the brain. And then also because of that same kind of deficiency, I was never really good at special effects or like After Effects and stuff. And I've learned a lot finishing the last couple of films that I've done just by necessity. Like I used to have an old car, and everything I know about cars is because what broke on that car.
Is that your Mustang?
Yeah, it's a Mustang. Yeah, the old Mustang.
I remember that old Mustang.
Yeah, she's in all my films. So that's it's kind of by the same token how I learned about After Effects is like things that I had to fix on projects I learned how to do. So I'm getting better at it, but effects are definitely like a weak spot for me.
So you're basically good at everything. You know how to do everything in the filmmaking world.
A little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything. I think that's how I am too. You know, 'cause like you said, you can't. You need people to do stuff, and if you can't find the right people to help you out in projects, then you kind of have to do it on your own.
It's kind of a condition that's unique, not completely unique, but I think widespread unique to our generation because of the way that we came up during the digital revolution. Because like I don't know if you remember, but like when we were going to school, it was like the Sony Sony 900 or whatever it was called. It was like the camera that George Lucas was using to shoot the new Star Wars movies. And like Rod Rodriguez was using it. Like that was like the first time like a big digital camera was being used on big budget film sets. So we were like, the birth of like the Rebel T2i and stuff, right?
The DSLRs.
Like,
I remember when they came out.
Yeah, like all that game changing shit happened when we were sort of still developing into filmmakers. So there was a time prior to us where things could be more segmented because they had to be. So you could just get good at one thing and you could have an entire career doing that one. You could be a dolly grip and you could have a whole career being a dolly grip, get into the union. But like these days, for a lot of the younger people coming up, even below us, you kind of have to do a little bit of everything to diversify because the demand for projects is much higher and the demand for your skills is much higher. Like, I don't think I know a single director of photography who isn't also an editor who couldn't also pull focus if they needed to. But I know, like among our generation, but I know DPs that I've talked to that are much older than me that wouldn't dare pull their own focus. And I think that's crazy, but it's just like a huge generational gap in like the development of technology and like how that changed the way that we had to enter the industry. Like we have to know a little bit of everything, especially if you're trying to get your own independent film off the ground. Like then there's going to be a day where you can't afford somebody to fill a position and you're just going to have to do it. And if you don't figure out how to do it, you're going to fail. And that's your whole movie on your back. So
yeah, you have to wear many hats to get things done.
Yeah,
and that's something I think we learned growing up and going to college, right? But going back to college, what were some of your like favorite projects that you worked on that you felt that you learned a lot and it helped you grow? And maybe also include like who you worked with, what kind of people that you were working with in these projects.
Let me see. So we did one of the bigger ones that I did just kind of on my own for fun was a short film called Exhale, and it was a zombie film. And that one, like we pretty much included a bunch of people from class, a bunch of friends, local actors that we had worked with. And like my buddy at the time, like when we were inseparable, was Jesse Miguel Gomez. I think he might be going by Navarro Parks these days. But like he was like the actor that was in like all of my stuff. And he was great. I learned a lot on that project because it was one of the first times that I needed to have like multiple days to finish something and involve multiple like departments. So like my buddy Kavika Cabanas was doing the special effects on that one. And then we had Cristobal Hernandez, goes by Zombie. He was doing blood effects for us. Then he was also in it. And that was really cool. That was like kind of a larger production. And to this day, I laugh about that one because it's not, I mean, if you watch it now, like you guys can check it out. It's not like the most revolutionary like zombie short film on YouTube. And it's not even shot extremely well or anything, but I still get comments on it. Like it's still accruing views and I still get new comments and people are like, oh, talking zombies. That's crazy.
Is this on your YouTube?
Yeah, it's on my
What's your YouTube channel?
I don't even know if you just YouTube my name, it'll come up. Yeah.
Chris or Christopher?
Christopher.
Just Christopher Sheffield?
Yeah.
Google Christopher Sheffield. Watch this guy's films because these guy makes really cool films. And I love your short films. They're really cool.
Thank
you.
As
far as like professors, right, that like taught us, is there one professor that really just kind of mentored you and guided you that stands out?
There was one guy, Professor Staub, Jonathan Staub. I think his like industry name was like Johnny Dust or something. Like he said like before, because he was one of the few professors that actually came from LA to Phoenix. And I think like the best thing that he did, like he had great advice in general, but I think the best thing that he did was just give us permission to be creative. Like it was his prerogative to sort of allow us to form our own separate teams in class, like choose who we wanted to work with instead of assigning, and then make sure that the equipment room was made open to us, and then give us like a wide berth when it came to producing. So like some of the stuff, like I had to, there's a film festival recently that my buddy is throwing that is just all about like your bad film school projects. And so I recently had to do a deep dive into like my ancient hard drives to find these things. But most of the things that I pulled out of there were because of his class. And I think the technical class that he was supposed to be teaching was like filmmaking and cinematography. But he was mostly like a director, I think, in his career, like a commercial director. So he wasn't even super savvy on cinematography. In fact, there were times that I felt like I was helping him with camera stuff in class. But it was just a mentor that gives you permission to be creative is like the best thing that you can hope for, because anybody, if you're teaching somebody and you're only teaching them through your experience, there's a point where they're going to need to grow beyond you, you know? So you have to give them permission to do that. And that's what he did for us. I think that was like the best thing that we could have had. And sadly, that was like the last like half year of schooling that I had was with him. And I wish he had been there like the whole time. But it was cool. It was very cool.
Yeah. What kind of genres do you like to create? What kind of film genres? Do you have like a specific favorite one, or do you kind of have a spectrum?
I want to be able to make everything because I love everything and I love watching everything, and it excites me to think that I could create in every genre. But I think I've definitely specialized in like action and horror because both of those are they're very fun on set, but they're also like there's a technical element to them that, like I said, it's like that magic trick that I kind of focused on a lot in school. When I came out of school, I was decent enough at it that I was getting hired to do those a lot. And so once you do that, you kind of fall into these communities of people who are also doing it. And so I fell into those communities and got to make those films.
Yeah. And you made a ton of short films. How many short films do you think if you could just think in your head, how many short films do you think you've made?
Of my own, like written and directed,
Yeah.
something maybe like 20 or 30. But my IMDb is huge because of the amount of short films that I've done. I think I have like over 80 or something on there.
Do you have a favorite one that you like till this day you just kind of love, and that's like your baby that you've made, the short film?
Favorite of mine, I think most recently, Welcome to the Sting, which is that one. It's on YouTube now. It was we did a festival circuit with it because it's an action piece, and it was born of my buddy Billy R. Smith. He's really, really talented stunt choreographer and coordinator. He's a martial artist, and we were supposed to work on this film that I had written, and then their investors fell through. And him and I were both really bummed about it because we had some really cool ideas. And I just kind of sent him a message. I was like, hey, man, like, I'm tired of these things falling through. Like, do you want to work on something together, just you and I? And he was like, yeah, let's do it. And that day I sat down, I wrote, like, it was like a 5-page script. I sent it to him. I was like, what do you think of this? It sets up like 3 big fight scenes and it could be fun. And he was like, I'm all in, let's go. And so him and I pooled our money together. We went out and cast the project, picked the location, and it ended up being like this perfect production. Like everything went, I mean, what's funny is that not everything went smooth. The actor actually pulled the lead, one of our lead martial artists, the lead of the film, pulled a hamstring, like 2 takes into the biggest fight scene. And we had to like stop and like allow him to recover while we were trying to figure out how best to re-choreograph the whole thing to like protect his legs. Cause you know, as a young dude, he's got a whole career ahead of him. We're like, I can't ruin you on a short film. But even that being said, we still wrapped like an hour early every day, shot everything we wanted. The edit came together super fast. And then I started sending out to festivals, and I got into a bunch of action festivals, won best action at a couple of them. Yeah, all around just a wonderful experience. And we had such a good time with it, and it set up such a fun story that I took it and I turned it into like a pilot. So I wrote a whole pilot for that as a show. And then I went and I learned a bunch doing this. I developed a big pitch deck for it, and I wrote out a whole season. And so I've got like every episode of the first season plotted out completely, and all of that from just like doing the same thing that we did in film school, where it was like, hey, let's just go make a movie, you know?
Yeah.
And like, that's how like I think all the great ideas are born from that. Like just, you know, fun people collaborating with fun people.
And yeah, man, that's 100% true. You have to collaborate with the right people. But how do you find these people? Are these just friends that you are around? Like, how do you find the right people to work with?
I think that that as artists, like we all kind of like have a specific frequency, and you want to find people that kind of vibrate with you. And I think that what's cool about a film set is that there is no film set that's going to have like less than 10 people on set. Then that's on the very low end. And on the high end, you've got anywhere from 50 to 100. So you're always going to be around a bunch of other artists, and the odds that you guys have similar interests are pretty high. So the main question is, do I vibe with you? And with a film set, when you're on set with somebody for 12 hours a day for even like a couple days or a week or a month on a larger project, like you get pretty close. So I think it becomes pretty apparent early on, and then over the course of like long, stressful days, like who handles that stress like you, who is still creative at the end of a 10-hour, session or whatever. Like, and those are the people that you are going to want to work with, is the people that handle the set the way you do. And that way that that when you're on set together, there's not going to, because it doesn't matter like if they're super talented. It matters if you create the same way, because at the end of the day, like, they can be super talented, but if you're butting heads the whole day, it's not going to work. So you just want to find the people that you can call friend, and those are the people that you want to work with. And I think you only do that just by getting on more sets.
And these short films, how do you budget these films? Like, where do you get, like, because I mean, you can't, people are working for free, or how does that work? How do you get investments for these short films?
Investments for a short film is tough because a short film doesn't necessarily have a monetary value, but a short film does. It can be incredibly valuable if you use it correctly. A short film is like a targeted bullet, and you make that bullet and you fire it at a special target specifically. So like, if I wanted to prove, which I actually did this, I wanted to prove that I could direct drama. So I write and direct and create 2 short films back to back that are just drama, like no horror, no action, nothing, just people and people problems and emotions. And then I do that specifically so that I can submit it to film festivals, so that I can be seen as a drama director if I want to pitch myself for a drama film. Then I'll have material to send for that. So you can only get somebody to invest in that if your goals align with their goals. If you want to produce something and be known as a producer of drama, good news. I have a script. I have a team. If you can invest in me, then I can make that film happen. But that's a rare circumstance, I think, for a short film. Usually short films are like, you get grants, or you get, family to fund it, or you do like a Kickstarter or something, and you do it that way. Otherwise, you pay for your own film. If you have somebody like, for instance, with Billy and I, when we did Welcome to the Sting, our mutual interest was to make something that we could both really shine on and to have creative control over the whole thing. So him and I both pooled our own personal money for that. Which is often what I've done, is use my own personal money. But there is another way to do it when it comes to getting talented people to work on your film, is that typically speaking, if I do a job and you don't do that job, then we have a sense of trade. So like, if you come and work on my film for 4 days and you've got a script, I'll come and work on your film for 4 days. And so I've done a lot of trades like that with my fellow crew members that allowed them access to myself and my camera and all of my lights and whatever skills that I could bring to help them out. One of them, for my second feature, I even went and shot his wedding as payment. He was my AD. So yeah, it's you find ways to sort of barter around the budget, because at the end of the day, what's kind of cool is at the end of the day, like, we all moved out here, or we get into film wherever you're at, if you're in Atlanta or whatever, we get into film because we want to work on cool shit. We want to make something cool. And if you are the kind of leader that gives the artists around you the respect to create something cool, like, if you're really good at your thing and I give you the chance to do your thing without me like telling you how to do it or stopping your good ideas, like letting you breathe on set, you're going to be way more willing to come and work with me for a smaller rate, because the work is going to be worth it. And you know that your work is going to be respected and it's going to make the final cut, and I'm going to brag about you, like all that stuff. Like, so I think that you have to be a good person about it, and you have to make sure that you're providing value to them while they're providing value to you. But there's like many ways to do that.
And what's like the budget? Like, do you have a budget set, or how does that work, like, in your head? How do you figure out, like, let's say, okay, this short film, right? We're going to need 10, 15, 20K, or maybe not even, maybe like 3K. Mm-hmm. How do you figure out the budget for a short film? Let's say 10-minute short film.
It always depends on the resources you need. So like, the first step would be like, if I'm writing something that I want to be able to produce myself with, again, like a lot of my mindset is always around removing barriers to entry. So if the film is going to require a lot of things that are expensive, that's a barrier to entry. And that means that from the time that I come up with the idea to the time that I shoot, that might be months or years, depending on how large that barrier to entry is. If it's $10,000 to shoot a period film, and I don't have somebody willing to drop $10,000, that's a long fucking barrier to entry. So if I know that I have a friend who knows how to get into Heritage Park here in LA, and I can use one of those old houses there for a cheap rate, like, then that friend needs to be involved with this project as a producer, and I'll bring it to them first. So you kind of, you try to find all the ways to skirt around having to spend money, especially for something like a short that's not monetized at the end of the day. And then after that, after you've kind of used all of your resources, then you can see, okay, who are the people that I absolutely have to pay to show up? and what is that going to cost me? And then you go from there.
So do you pay like your actors, or who are the people that are like that need to get paid?
As often as I can, yeah. For features, for sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
For short films, usually I'll pay them with services because I can offer a lot of services to actors. I can shoot real scenes for them. I can do headshots. So if I know it's only going to be like 2 days of work and they love the script, I could probably get them to agree to do it for free because they like my work and they like the script. So they know that, again, that their work is going to be respected. It's going to be presented well. But I never want anybody to come on feeling like they're doing something for free because I don't want to leave a trail of favors behind me. So I like to offer something like, I will do your headshots. I'll do your real scenes or whatever. Or again, like everybody out here has got a script. I'll shoot your film. So I think I always try to find the way to kind of barter down the budget, especially with a short film. Features are a little different because features, it's a longer concentrated time that somebody needs to be around working. So
yeah. And you talk about equipment. Do you have a ton of equipment that you own, or do you rent most of it?
Between myself and friends that are gaffers and DPs, we have a pretty huge collection of equipment between various cameras of different like sizes, lens packages, lighting kits, G&E, grip and electric stuff. Again, try to avoid having to rent things if you can. And then the things that you do then have a budget to rent are the things that you could, at our price level, we couldn't own, which are like, like excellent lenses that are, like $50,000 lenses or something. Like you can rent those pretty cheaply for a couple days, or like a camera package that's maybe a little bit nicer than the ones that we have access to. But yeah, again, in general, like, try to be smart about your resources and use things that you have access to. Because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters at the end of the day is that final film and that final story. And there's a lot of technical stuff that you can get lost in between that script and that final film. But if you can get to that end result, then it doesn't really matter if this light is an Amaran 200X with a softbox on it, or if this light is a Home Depot light that hits the same color temperature being shot through a shower curtain. Does the light look pretty on my face? Excellent. Let's shoot. Like that's what matters. Like getting down to like what's in front of the camera. So whatever you can do to eliminate your barrier to entry to allow you to create your art is, I think, a viable path forward.
Yeah. And feature films. Let's talk about your first feature film, because I was part of your first feature film, right? Run for Your Life. That was your first feature film. I was there. I'm actually in your film.
You are. You have a famous line.
I do have a famous line.
We still quote it to this day.
Yeah. That was shot in Yuma, Arizona. So I have been to your hometown.
Yeah.
But talk about your first feature film. How did that come about, and how did you also fund that?
So because I was so adamant that I was going to prove that this was a real job and a real career, both to myself and to my family, the day that I graduated, like literally the day of my graduation, I left the school and drove straight to an interview with a local truck company called Inland Kenworth. They sell semi trucks, and I interviewed with them to do their videos and got hired that day. So I got like my first job in like commercial film work or whatever, like the day I graduated. And I spent the whole summer shooting truck commercials for them while also doing like local music videos and photo shoots, doing headshots and stuff like that. And through that whole summer of work, I made my first budget for a feature film, which was around like $11K, something like that. And then that's the money that I took and gathered my friends and a couple actors and went back down to Yuma, Arizona, which is where I grew up, and shot Run for Your Life. And that script was like kind of a weird amalgamation of all the ideas about what that like these are all ideas that I had in like high school, because it was all about experiences that I had in high school with real people, real friends, real bullies, real whatever. And then I sort of wrapped it around this very like surreal take on mental health. And then we went down there and shot that film.
And we shot that in what? Like how many days was that? Was that 2 days?
No, it was more than that, because it was like 5 days, I think, down there. And then I came back and did like another 2 days, like a couple months later when I got a little bit more money together. So I think overall it was like a 7-8 day production.
Yeah. And what did you learn from that experience, from shooting your first feature film and having a pretty big budget, $11K you said, right?
Yeah.
What was like the biggest takeaway?
It's funny, the two big takeaways, and both of these I experienced in post-production more than in production, because in production you're in this kind of like whirlwind. You're just trying to get it done. Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. It was one of the until I started my next film, it was one of the best weeks of my life. Like I absolutely loved it. It was very affirming that like this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, is have this kind of adventure over and over again. But one big takeaway was because it took me a long time to get that movie out, and I was actually afraid to release it when I had a final cut, because I didn't think it was good enough. There's a lot of technical errors and stuff. I was a baby filmmaker. And then I ended up showing it to a director on a set I was working on, because he asked about my films. I was like, I've got one, I haven't released it. And he's like, send it to me. I was like, no, he's like, send it to me. I sent it to him. He watched it that night, came to set the next morning, and gave me like the biggest confidence boost of my life. He was like, that is a hell of a calling card. You need like, he's like, I could just feel how much fun you guys were having making that movie. Like all the weird angles you chose and stuff. He's like, you were having such a great time. You need to release this movie. And he's like, never be afraid to release your work again. Like he's like, release that movie. And so that was like a huge lesson for me of being like, I held on to it way too long. I needed to stand behind my work, because even if it wasn't technically where I thought I was now, it was a mark of the time, and the story lives beyond its technical elements if you're not in the film industry. So that was the first one. The second lesson I learned was that I needed to learn how to lean into minimalism, because I didn't enough in that film. And the simple truth is that when you're making an indie film, you're not going to have all the great resources. You're not going to have all the big things. But the things that you do have, you just need to take them and lean into the minimalism of them and make those smaller elements really sing. And that's something that I learned afterwards in post-production. I was like looking at some of the scenes and thinking like, man, I could have taken, instead of trying to do like this big thing with all these people, I could have taken this one moment and made that moment a big thing. So there's a lot of like kind of post-production lessons like that.
Yeah. And how many features have you done now?
Run for Your Life, Split Lip, Road to Revenge, At the Ground, Blood in Them Hills. So five of mine that I've directed.
That is wild, man. That's crazy. And that's over the span of what, 10 years?
Yeah. And there's been a lot more in between there that I would just DP it or just edit it or whatever. So
that someone else was involved, producing, directing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I've only written one that I didn't end up, I DP'd a couple days on it, but it was one of our professor's films.
So what's the process? If you could just maybe like break this down real quick. Mm-hmm. What's a process in making a feature film from start to finish?
Break it down quick, Jesus.
Yeah, I know it's a tough
it's
one.
A long process.
Yeah, it's a long process, but you know, just for the audience, just to kind of get an idea of like how much work it takes to create a feature film. From like the writing process, right, or like the concept.
Yeah,
the
so
writing.
you start with the concept, then you have to start writing the script, and that's going to take you a while to get through, because a general feature script is going to be around 100, 110 pages, maybe less. I tend to write mine shorter because I know that I like to let moments breathe longer. So I give myself a little bit of room. So I write like 80-page feature scripts, and that usually works out for me. But so you get the script done, and then you have to convince other people to be a part of it, because this is not going to be a solo venture unless it's going to be a one-person show, which is, you know, there's cheaper ways to do that. So you get people involved as producers, and then you and your producers have to go out and try to get the money for the project. So you have to learn to pitch your project over and over and over and over again to various people until you can get someone that invests. Okay, now you have money. Now you got to start pre-production. So now you have to start planning how you're going to do this thing. You got to look at how much time you need. You got to do a full script breakdown of every single scene and break down like every element in that scene, the location, what's in front of the camera, the props, the people, what are they wearing? What does their makeup look like? What's that progression over how many days? And then you do this massive breakdown of every single element of your script. And then you got to take that breakdown and format it into a schedule. So you got to look at everything and be like, okay, what is smart for us to do first? What locations do we have? And so you're kind of working on top of each other, where you've got someone out looking for locations. You've got someone out grabbing props. And basically every department that's out working at the same time is learning new things about the resources that you're looking for. And those new things that they learn are going to constantly make your schedule do this like nonstop. Like you're going to keep moving things around. And then you're at the same time, you're casting actors. When they come on board, sometimes they move the schedule around. And if you're making an indie film, then you're not going to involve big names. If you are going to involve big names, then they are going to be a huge chunk of your production's resources monetarily. and also are going to require you to do a bunch of extra stuff to sort of meet the SAG requirements, which, good for SAG, take care of your people. So you get through all of that, and then it's time to make the movie. And then you start. And then, so generally speaking, when I first moved out here, I remember a lot of the older crews grumbling about the 22-day feature being an insanely short amount of time to make a movie. Blockbusters will take a couple months to shoot, but smaller films will generally be around the 20 to 30 day range, and then at the level below that, indie films will be anywhere from 5 days to 12.
And these are full days. Yeah,
these are. I mean, on a huge budget film where you've got all the unions involved, you can probably get away with 10-hour days. There's going to be overtime and stuff, I'm sure. But for the most part, most films are 12-hour days. And Jeez. So you do this crazy 12-hour day adventure, and that's 12 hours of creative problem solving, essentially, because things are very rarely do things line up. There's just so many elements. Mm-hmm. Very rarely do things line up perfectly the way they were in your head. So there's a lot of creative problem solving happening throughout the day. And then you get through all of that, and hopefully, if you're smart, you've got somebody that's been piecing your film together in post-production as you shoot. If you're not, you end up with a bunch of hard drives, and you got to go home and start prepping this thing. And then you have to edit the film. And so even if somebody is pre-editing, you still are going to go into a couple months of actual, really getting down to the nitty-gritty editing. And then you have what's called your locked cut. And once your cut is locked, now you got to get the other post-production departments involved. So now when you know for a fact you're not going to change any more of the visuals, now you can turn it over to sound. And post-production sound has to do something, and then VFX can come in and do something, and then you can start doing post-color timing where they're going to dial in all the color for the film, all of that stuff. Then you got to add credits, and then you got to get the score. All that is kind of happening on top of each other. And when that's finally done, now you got to sell it. So now you got to go find distribution. And then once you find distribution...
Hold up. So you don't even have distribution from the beginning to this whole time?
Oftentimes you don't. Sometimes if you can get what's called a promissory note, you can talk to your distributor before you make your film and say, hey, this is the film I'm going to make. And if they think that's a cool enough idea, or if they if you have an actor that's already interested that they like, a name attached or whatever, then they'll sign a promissory note that says when this is done, we'll be the first to take a look at it. But generally speaking, you have to finish the film first and then start sending screeners out. And some people make the film specifically to be taken to festivals first, so that the distribution can find them at festivals. But it really depends on what kind of film you're making for that.
Yeah.
So then you're all done. You got to get distribution on board, and then once distribution comes on board, now you got to turn over deliverables, which is that's the different versions of the film as far as different resolution sizes, different versions of your audio, stereo, 5.1 surround. You got to do M&E, which is what allows you to sell the film overseas. It's where you take out all the sounds that are human noises, and then you just have this is just the sound effects, this is just the music. And that's so they can do dubbing in other countries. So there's a bunch of deliverables, and then they start working on the marketing process, which is your trailers, your posters, all of that. And then you figure out the rollout for the release. And that's when you set your release dates and you start building towards a premiere, and then figure out what platforms it's going to go on. And then if you're smart, you spend the next 2 years of that film's life constantly promoting it or paying for promotion or doing marketing for it or whatever, so that you can see the most amount of profit from its early life, and try to get it into the zeitgeist, try to get it into people's favorites lists.
Jeez, that was the fastest way to describe a feature film.
Oh, yeah, I skipped over a lot.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. But that was great. That was you did that in maybe 3 minutes.
Yeah.
This is crazy, man.
Yeah.
But let's talk about when you just moved to LA,
mm-hmm.
because I think this is where things start getting very interesting in your life.
Mm.
And I want to kind of get a little bit personal, if that's okay with you, and your downs and ups, and because I think that's where people can relate.
Yeah.
Moving to LA, especially as a filmmaker, a creator, an artist.
Yeah.
Right. What year and what made you decide to move to LA? What was that the catalyst that made you want to move to LA?
I think it was a group of friends and I in Arizona. All the artists that I respected in Arizona all kind of had LA in their sights, and I don't think I was ever really sure what I was going to do, because I didn't know what LA was like. So if I could have kept making films in Arizona, I might have stayed there longer. But everybody that I love to work with, all my favorite actors and who are also very close friends, were all moving out here. So I was like, yeah, that's what we're going to do. We're going to move to LA. We're going to make movies. Didn't know anything about this place. So I started coming out when I was doing like industrial work in Arizona. I would get a little bit of money underneath me, and then I would come out and stay for like a month or two on a friend's couch and just try to feel the city out. And I fell in love like right away. Like the first time I came, because, you know, keep in mind, I grew up in Yuma, in this tiny little town. And then I moved to Phoenix, which is bigger, but also kind of feels like a small town. Like Phoenix is just like, it's like just a grid system, and it's not super artistic. There's like one or two like artistic areas. And then I come to LA, where this place like barely makes sense. Like there's roads going everywhere. There's like signs for movies everywhere. You're never ever going to be the weirdest person in the room here, you know? And I was just like enamored with this place. I was like, I could do anything here and not feel like I didn't belong. Like it was crazy.
What year was this when you decided to move out here?
I don't know, 2011, I think, maybe. I think it was 2011. Something like that. Yeah, 2011, 2012. That I think I moved out. I think it was like 20. No, that must have been 2012 because I was like 22 years old, I think, when I moved out. But yeah, so it was just also fresh and exciting to me when I came out here. And then I wanted to move, but obviously it's a hard city to find a home in. So I came out. I kind of decided to like pull the trigger. I was like, if I keep doing this half in, half out thing, I'm never going to make the move. So I need to take the leap of faith and just come out. So I loaded up everything into my car, and I came out and stayed on a friend's couch and just hit the ground running. Like I started hitting up anybody that I knew out here that was doing crew that I had known from Arizona. Like a buddy that also went to school with us, Jay Luby. He got me my first job out here as a PA on like a reality show that he was a camera assistant on. I believe he's now a union camera operator. So I started doing that. I jumped onto Craigslist, which was still big at the time. And I was like, any job, I was like, have camera, will shoot. And like, I did some weird shit. Nothing like, no like porno, but like some stuff that I was like, this kind of fucking feels like porno. It was weird. Yeah. Some weird jobs, man. But like, I was just doing whatever for a paycheck and a camera, and I worked on everything. And then, there were ads for like, oh, camera PA, like no rate available, but you can come out and learn. And if I was not working, I was there. So I would go out to these sets for free, and I would meet these camera teams, and I'd have like a little, had this little like notebook, and I would just write down like things that I learned. And I was like, I'd watch the DPs work, and I'd watch the directors and the producers get into arguments, and I would like learn shit. And, I would go, like, everybody in LA they love the curious new people. So like, the older, saltier crew members who have learned a bunch and no one ever asks their opinion, but they always know the right way to do things. Like, ask their opinions, man. Cause like you would hear their gripes, and through their gripes, I would be like, okay, that's what you hate. So I'm not going to ask you to do that. When I have their job, I'm not going to ask you to do the thing that you hate, because now I understand why you hate it and why it's a bad idea. Like you sort of like learn from the people around you. So I was doing that a lot. And then that helped me establish myself enough to get my own apartment, and start doing, just kind of stay in that grinding thing for the first couple of years. But I also, and it's fine because we're friends now, but I lost out on a relationship when I first moved out here. I was dating a girl in Phoenix, and I came out here, and it was just very obvious that my sights were set on LA, and she was not the type that was ever going to move out here. And so we had to break up, and it was really heartbreaking for me at the time. And LA, like, for all of the glitz and glamour that I'm sort of talking about, like, this is a really hard city to live in. It's not friendly. You are constantly assaulted from your pocket, and it feels like you're going to be assaulted in person, and so like you're always like paying for things, and you're always like short, and there's always more that you need to do, and you feel like it's not enough. Like, it's a tough city to live in, especially for mental health. And so I at one point, like, I was living at this shithole apartment in North Hollywood, and I just kind of looked around and was like, this is what I have instead of a loving relationship. Like, this is what I chose. And like, that was really hard for a minute. It took me probably like a good year to recover from that. Like, I was still doing the work, and I was still doing the things, but I could tell in my work, and I could tell in my heart that I wasn't super happy. But I think that if you're going to move to a place like this, if you're going to come to do a job like this, like, you got to be prepared to adapt. And if you're going to adapt, you got to, like, things have to drop first, right? You got to experience that low, and everybody's got like the 3 or 4 year low when they move out here, and they realize that the industry isn't what they thought it was. The city isn't what they thought it was. Their role in society isn't what they thought it was. Everybody like realizes like, oh, wait, I had rose-colored glasses on. This is wrong. Like I thought everything was going to be glitz and glam, and this is kind of fucked. And then you either adapt to it and you become a part of it and you rise back up, or you go back home and no shame, go where you're happy, you know? Yeah. And so when I first moved out here, I think there was like 20 people that I knew from Arizona living out here. And over the course of 4 to 5 years, most of them moved home. And then there was 7. And I think these days there's like 3 or 4 of the people that I moved out here with that are still here. So yeah, it's a very tough city to live in. And so that was like just my early years. And then I really like, to one of the things that pulled me out of that funk was realizing that I was spending all of my time working on other people's projects and not my own. And so then I started writing Split Lip. And that's what sort of pulled me out of it, was giving myself another kind of North Star project to reach for. So I started writing my second feature, which was Split Lip.
Split Lip, yeah.
Yeah.
And I believe I was there for the premiere for Split Lip.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you got the
Yeah,
premiere.
I think
Yeah.
it was in Glendale, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was there for Split Lip, your second feature film, and that was a while ago too, though.
Yeah. It was amazing. That was such a crazy experience.
How did that do?
It did really well. It did really, really well. It actually, it got picked up when Tubi was first coming out, was when we were releasing it, and I had a really, really sharp person in my distribution team, and they were like, hey, we're going to go to Tubi first before anybody else. And I was like, what the fuck is Tubi? What are you talking? I was like, it needs to go on Amazon Prime. Like, how's it going to, like, no one's going to see it. And he's like, trust me, it needs to go to Tubi first. And it did. And then consistently throughout its life, the Tubi audience is what kept it alive. Like, it made all of its money because of Tubi. And it doubled its budget in the time that it's been out. So
nice.
Yeah.
And so what's your third feature film?
So I went from that one. Then I was working on developing a bunch of other projects, and then the Western landed in my lap, and that was Royals Revenge. When it was released, they changed it to Road to Revenge, but that name's stupid. So it's Royals Revenge is what I call it.
Tell me how you really feel.
It's this is how I feel. Distribution. Stop changing the names and posters of our movies. If they're already a good name, it's already a good poster, just release it.
What's the reason they decided to change it?
They like a lot of distribution companies do. This is not like a very kind sort of terminology that I use for it, but I call it kind of like pump and dump. Like they just want to get the movies out and just kind of throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. And I think that's what they do. And to do that, they don't want anything to stand out so much that you, the casual consumer, might think it's too weird to watch. So they try to make things sound just like other things, and they try to see what other things. That's why, like, when you look at like a Western movie poster, they all look the same. It's like the same, like 4 cowboys up top, some horses riding along the horizon line at the bottom, like, because the distribution companies are operating from a place of fear instead of a place of creativity. They're worried that nobody's going to click on this thing if they don't know it. And so they're going to try to make it as generic as possible so that somebody will just kind of safely be like, I'll just watch another Western, and they'll click on it. Which, like, those are the bad companies. The great companies will recognize when you have something that is unique enough to be branded, and they'll do the smart thing and they'll brand the hell out of it. And then they'll put it out there and let it be its own unique thing.
And you have no control over when distributors want to change the name or the poster?
When you sign it over, generally speaking, as a small time filmmaker, you don't. When it's a good deal, it's a conversation from the beginning, and the distributor, like the same way that you would hire any artist, the distributor wants to work with you because they like your product, and they want to work in cohesion with you. So then in that sense, they'll talk to you about it. But usually you sign it over and they do whatever they want with it because your part's done.
Yeah.
So.
And so that's your third feature. Is that a comedy? Is that the comedy one, or is that?
No, that one is a very, very classic Western, like a
classic
revenge
Western.
Story. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you give us a little just what it's about?
Yeah, it's a group of siblings whose lives have all sort of separated since they were kids, when this ranch owner came in and basically like killed their parents to take the land, and they all kind of find each other again as adults, and each one of them has had like a separate revenge plan, and they all end up in the same town at the same time, where this guy is like the Baron of that town, and they realize like, oh, we need to do this together, like, because all of our separate plans are going to fail. And so they kind of band together to take him down. Classic.
Where can people watch this?
It's called Road to Revenge.
Tubi?
Yeah, it's available everywhere, like Tubi, Amazon Prime, or whatever. And then the second Western is with a lot of the similar actors came over onto the next one. And this one is a little bit more fun. It's there's another one where distribution changed it. It was Bite the Ground, which is an actual like Western 1800s slang for getting knocked out or killed. You know, bite the ground, your head hits the ground. They changed it to Bite the Dust because they hate originality. But yeah, so that one is, and they also changed our post. My brother's poster was phenomenal. My brother's a graphic designer now, and his poster was phenomenal. And they changed it to look more generic because.
So if they changed it, who designs like the new one?
They have people that they go to. Like these companies will have like the same artists that they go to all the time. They just go back to them and say, "Hey, make us another Western." And
so that's the third or fourth. That's the fourth feature. The one you're talking about now.
Yeah.
What's a fifth?
So the fifth is that's called Blood in Them Hills, and it's the fifth or the final Western that I've done, and it is a supernatural Western. So it's the most like original of the two. It's something that I think there's like maybe 3 like horror Westerns out there, and we're kind of in that genre realm. Yeah.
Okay.
It was one of the most difficult films I've ever made in my life. Like Westerns in general, just because like you're shooting out in the elements, like in general, they're very rough and tumble kind of like you just can't shoot around the fact that you have to be out in the desert in the heat, you know? But this one we did the main run of production. It was a very ambitious film, and there's a lot of crazy sequences in it and stuff. And we did it with a tiny, tiny crew, skeleton crew. And the first half of production we shot in Arizona in July in Phoenix. So it was monsoon season, 115 degrees every day. And then we had, monsoons and humidity. And then when we broke on that, we did the winter unit. The winter unit was in the White Mountains, which is like the top north end of Arizona in the winter. And that was, we had like blizzards, like 30 degrees. One day was 9 degrees outside. And we were we would sweat carrying equipment, and then it would turn to frost. No. So we'd have frosted beards. Yeah, and I had this huge like mountainous beard because I was just moving from like project to project, so I just kind of didn't have time to like come home and like clean myself up. So I was growing this big like set beard.
And that's the fifth one.
Yeah.
And how many you have? You said how many feature films?
5 that I've directed.
5 that you directed that are done and that people can go watch now. The
last one, Blood in Them Hills, is not out yet, but
Okay.
we're in the if you guys remember How to Make a Movie, we're in the deliverables section of that story. So we're getting it out to distribution. They love it. They're excited about it, and hopefully we'll be releasing it in November, which means that by like late August, early September, I can start talking about it and sharing trailers and stuff. So
awesome.
Yeah.
And out of these 5 films, which one's like the biggest budget?
Blood in Them Hills is the biggest budget.
This last one?
Yeah.
It sounds like it. You have like different locations and so many things going on.
Yeah, it took a lot of time to shoot that. And that's a good lesson when it comes to making films, is that it doesn't, like the film isn't born until it's released. So like it does not matter how long it takes you to write it, how long it takes you to produce it, how long it takes you to shoot it, even if you're spending years and years on one of those 3 sections of the process. All that matters is when the film gets released. From that date, it's born and on. And so like this one has taken a long time to do, but it doesn't matter because it only matters when it's released.
And you don't have a release date?
No, we can't say for sure yet. We have to get through, there's processes that are kind of out of our hands that we have to get through first to get it like broadcast ready, basically. Kind of get it up to the standard of everybody's TVs and sound systems and stuff. Yeah. So then once it's ready and we know for sure that we have all the files ready and approved, then we can start talking about when we're going to release it.
So this is the next one that's going to be released.
Yeah.
And how many other feature films do you have like in either pre-production or maybe just concept?
So there's a horror one that I have that's I think it's going to be like my favorite film that I've ever made, and that one is heavy in pre-production right now. And then there's another action script that I just started talking to a producer about like a couple days ago that I've had for a while that I'll probably start producing through her. So.
And that the second one you're talking about, that one's you're having a budget for it, right? What's it called?
Eigengrau.
And you said you have shot one scene from that film.
Yeah. So Eigengrau is it's like it's Eigengrau. First of all, it's a German word, and it means the color of darkness when your eyes are closed. So it's an excellent title for a horror film. So that film, I took some initial basically I did some initial makeup tests on my own dime. So I paid for the actor to come in and the makeup pieces and the makeup artist. And we built a little set in my room, like in the back room of my apartment. And we did some super creepy like makeup tests with the actor, like movement tests, really like nasty stuff. And then I took that and was able to get the initial round of funding with that footage. And then with that initial round of funding, which was not very much, we took that amount and then we shot one scene out of the film. that required one of the craziest like special effects, like kind of creature builds. And we did that so that we would have an even bigger sort of like incentive to then go get more funding.
How are you getting funding for this film?
There's a million ways to do it. The way that my personal sort of process is to reach out to people that I know that have private equity and show them the film, show them the stuff that we've done, let them know our game plan for it, let them know our game plan for like where we want to shoot, what tax incentives we want to get back, how we want to make their money back early on, what distribution companies we already have relationships with that we've talked to. So, kind of let them know that this isn't them just like throwing money at a bunch of amateurs. Like we've got the pipeline all set up. All we need is the check, basically. And then everything runs like water downhill from there. So we've been super ready to shoot this film for a while. And then my good friend, and she's producing mine, Melissa Vitello, she's got her own horror film, Regression, that she is going to be directing that I'm actually DPing for her. So we're trying to package them together so that we can get a couple different investors to jump on board to do this as kind of like a slate. So we get to shoot both films back to back, and like, because it's basically the same crews for both and almost the same cast. So we'll be able to go back to back and like, go find a place that's got a really good tax incentive, like Louisiana, for instance, and shoot these two back to back, and then have two films ready to sell in the next year. So,
and these films that you're producing right now, are they going to be in theaters? Is that a goal of yours to have a film in theaters?
Mm-hmm. So when we did Royal's Revenge, that one, because of the pandemic, the theaters were super open, and I actually got to do a theatrical run for that movie. So it played all across Harkins in Arizona, and I think a couple like Midwest states, and that was really, really cool. And then I DP'd the Grinch horror film, the Mean One. I DP'd that one, and that one got into theaters all across the U.S. and then even went like South America, and that was really cool. And so I'm absolutely in love with the idea that something that I worked on, like being in theaters, I want that for sure, because I think that like it's the best environment to watch a film. You're completely locked in. There's no phones distracting you, no friends talking. Like hopefully no friends talking. Don't talk in the theaters. So like that, I think that's the best way to have somebody experience your movie. And like you always kind of shoot for the moon, like Blood in Them Hills. Our sound design, his name's Kevin Ty. He lives in Arizona. He's like kind of like our whole post sound department. And he's incredible. And the stuff that he does is specifically so that if somebody has a surround sound system or if they're in a theater, it's going to sound amazing. And even though, the odds are good, the only time that movie's going to play in a theater is for the premiere, because we don't have the budget to pay for like a big theatrical run. We still want to make it as close to that high-end experience as possible, even with limited budget. But yeah, I would love to have in theaters. I think that's the kind of horror movie that you got to be locked in on. It's going to be a weird one. So.
No, yeah, it looks incredible. I've seen some of the scenes that you've shot already with it, and I'm excited to see that movie. And it's
creepy.
Not even. It looks super creepy. I think you're so good at like making things look really creepy. Like even some of your short films that you've made, man. Like I was watching some of your short films before you came in here, and I was like, dude, this is crazy. I was just writing some notes and having your short films in the back. I'm like, dude, that's crazy. You're so good at that. And I can't even imagine how much better you've gone even now with 10 years of experience, which is crazy.
Thank you.
So what are some of your future goals? Let's say, is there one film that you have in mind that you want like a huge budget for?
I think what I would like to do, so I've got the Welcome to the Sting is ready to be made as a show, and that one definitely is going to need a budget because there's a lot of like crazy stunts and guns and car crashes and all this stuff. I think what would like the ideal situation for me, and this was actually something that was almost lined up this last year, but we've had a tough year for film with strikes and all this other things that have kind of like made a lot of projects that were probably going to change a lot of people's careers go away like in a puff of smoke. And one of those happened for me. But the main goal would be to have studio projects that I can come on board and direct, either things that I bring to them or scripts that I'm attached to with my friends who are always pitching to the different studios, to be able to come on and direct like larger scale projects for them, and then take those paychecks, my personal money, and do one of my indie films in between. And always, because like at the end of the day, like the best experiences I have on set are when I'm surrounded by my friends. And we're all making something that we're all having a good time doing, even if it's a really intense subject matter. Even if our actors are crying their eyes out on camera, when we call cut, everybody can hug it out and we can start laughing and cracking jokes. Like, because being around good people is so important. And so what I would like to do is do whatever I need to do for the sake of the industry, direct whatever I need to direct, whatever projects, whatever size and scale, but always take those funds and wrap them back around to being able to making my movies with my people. Because I think that's like the absolute joy. That's the happiest I've been in this industry, is when I'm on set having a little film adventure with them. So being able to kind of like cater that experience for myself, I think will be like a huge career goal.
So if someone were to write you a check, how much would you want that check for to make your film, your goal film?
I mean, I can grow anywhere from 400K to 1 million. Drop it.
Let's go.
Yeah.
400K to 1 million.
Yeah. We can make the film for that. I mean, I could. The crazy thing about movies is that you can make them for any number. It just changes the kind of movie you're making. Yeah. So we can make the movie for less, but that's what we want. We want 400K to 1 million for I Can Grow.
How long till you get the budget to start shooting the rest of that film?
I would like, it's crazy because like when you're looking for money, those conversations are just happening continuously. So like even now as we speak, there are 3 or 4 different avenues of funding that we're having the like slow burn conversation with, and things just, when you're talking about other people's money, things just move like icebergs. Like it's just so slow. And it can be really frustrating for artists, especially somebody like me who's used to just like, I'm just gonna grab a camera and go, to like be like, shut up and wait. Like it'll like, you want to do this right, you got to take your time. And so that's what I'm kind of the discipline that I'm leading into right now.
Yeah. So as long as it takes, pretty much. As long as it takes to get that.
As long as it takes. Like I said,
to make the film you want to make.
Yeah. The movie doesn't matter until you release it. It's not born until you release it. So if you got to take more time to shoot, if something isn't right and you need to go out and go find more money to reshoot a piece of it, like none of that takes away from the value of the film. It's not born until it's released. So make it the way you want it.
Dude, I love your passion for filmmaking, and like it inspires me and motivates me to do like my own thing and the stuff that I do, right? But who's someone that inspires you, or someone that you look up to that motivates you to keep doing what you're doing?
It's a good question. I've never actually had like a direct mentor that kind of does all the things that I do or that I want to do. I've had a lot of small mentors over like various, productions and various times spent with, around different directors. But I kind of just glean from everything that I can learn. I don't know. There's definitely directors out there that are doing really cool shit with really small budgets. Gareth Edwards is one of them. He's like his movie Monsters. That movie like inspired the hell out of me to go do Run for Your Life. Ryan Johnson, he when he made Brick, and then he got to spend the rest of his career making weird movies until he did Star Wars, and everybody hated him, and then he came back with Knives Out, and it's like the greatest comeback. But I mean, now he's making weird movies. Like Knives Out are weird movies, and he gets to do what he wants, and audiences like love him for his special brand. So I really admire stuff like that, like filmmakers who stick it out and might not always make the popular film, but they make the film that they want to make. What
films do you like to watch?
I try to see everything, and I also decided a couple years ago that because everybody's writing reviews, and it's just really, really easy to write a bad review, and it takes a little bit more brain power to think about what does this filmmaker want to say, and did they say it, and like try to go into it. Go into the film completely open and just let the film take you on a journey, and then just lean into it without that like hostility. I feel like a lot of people, because theaters are so expensive and time is difficult, and like sitting down to do a movie, it's like people go in there with almost this hostility these days of like, entertain me. And it's like, that's a kind of a hard place. Like you're coming in with closed doors for me to try to open your heart with my movie. It's like I'm working uphill against your expectations the whole time. So I try to just be open when I go in to sit and watch movies. I just saw one called I Saw the TV Glow. Or I watched the TV Glow. I'm gonna get the name of that movie wrong. That's embarrassing. Hopefully I got it right the first time. Phenomenal, super, super fucking weird movie. But like you kind of have to be down for the rabbit hole, and and that was really, really good. Just falling down that rabbit hole like that. But I like action and horror. I can watch anytime. Those are like a candy shop. It's harder for me to watch hard drama because I'm a very empathetic person. So like I'm crying when they're crying, and like that's not always like the most fun, to be like, I just want to have a good cry. Like not often do I feel that way. But I do love those movies because they are like really powerful. And I think I need to watch more comedy. That's a note for myself. I don't watch enough comedy.
Are you into comedy?
I love comedy.
Like stand-up comedy?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. I don't watch enough of it, but every time I do, I love it. So.
Have you ever watched Kill Tony?
Kill Tony? No.
Yeah, it's a show. It's basically, the format is basically they're on stage and it's a panel. It's kind of like a podcast, live podcast.
Okay.
But it's a panel of like comedians. Do you know Tony Hinchcliffe?
No.
He's a stand-up comic. So he's like the main host. But there's just a panel of different people. And they give comedians a minute to come on stage and give their best minute, basically. And it's kind of like a roulette. Like people just come up. Yeah, you sign up and people just walk up and they could give their best minute. Sometimes they're good. Sometimes they really suck. And they just
terrifying.
Get roasted by Tony Hinchcliffe and like other comedians in the panel, which is hilarious. But if you like comedy, I think you'd enjoy it. Kill Tony.
What is that on? What platform?
It's on YouTube. They just posted on YouTube.
Incredible.
Yeah, they were just here. I think at the Kia stadium performing. So now they're doing stadiums, just
I like
crazy.
To take a second to remember like which capitalist company took over the stadium. Like is it Kia? Is it MaxiPad? Like, who has that stadium?
But yeah, if you like comedy, I think you should take a look at that. But
I would, yeah.
But yeah, is comedy something that you kind of want to make more films of?
Yeah, I've only done it a little bit when I mean, with the Western comedy that we did, we're a little shackled by the Western part of it because like, you really got to do that genre justice. You got to make sure those fans are happy. Otherwise, because like Western isn't something that most casual viewers watch. Like a Western audience member watches a Western movie. Like most people aren't like, I'm going to check out this Western, you know? So you really got to do that element right. You can't lean super heavy on the comedy or they feel like you're making fun of their genre. But comedy is so much fun and it's so much fun to shoot. It's so hard to shoot because I break a lot. So like I've actually I've been filming comedic scenes that were cracking me up where I'm got my hands on the camera and I just got to like lock the tripod and take my hands off because otherwise I'd be like shaking, like trying to not laugh on the take. Yeah, I love shooting comedy. I really do. I think because I specialized in like horror and action and stuff, and because I have so much fun doing those, I end up going that realm a lot. But I do love a good comedy.
Yeah. So let's talk about social media. How do you use social media to promote your work, promote your films? Like, do you have like a strategy that you use like regarding social media?
Yeah, I mean, the two main things that I try to keep in mind with social media, because it's always going to change per platform, right? Like the physical kind of things that you do. But the number one thing is you want to control what people find when they Google you. You want to control your Google search. So that's like, you want to make sure that you're being represented the way, especially as an artist, the way you want to be represented. So you have to do your research as far as like how to make each platform look the best. How to make each platform look the best when you first find it and make sure that you are catering to that look. So that like my Instagram is like very polished because when you go find me as a director, I don't want you to see, I mean, I do like my stories are full of like cat videos and shit, but like, my actual feed is like, that's where you see all my professional projects and stuff. And then the other element of it is that social media becomes a job when you don't feel like you're providing value to somebody. So if you hate what you're doing, like you're not going to do it well. You're not going to post all the time. It's going to be like dragging yourself through the mud just to like make to make a TikTok. But if you figure out what value you enjoy offering to other people, then it becomes very easy. It becomes very seamless. My first journey onto TikTok was to do like little small film tutorial clips, just telling people like I pick one subject and be like, this is what I think on that subject. And I shot like 25 of them in one day and like just with my phone in my room. And then it was really easy to edit them and throw them out there because I figured out what value I could provide to somebody that it didn't feel like I was just like trying to be hilarious or something, So that's like my two strategies on social media. But I think it's very important. Like it's not going away,
Yeah. No, I think it's important too. Especially like when you're making your films and you're on set. I think it's cool to see like the behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that's like kind of the joy of social media, especially as you go forward and like I get bigger and bigger budgets and stuff, right? Then there's going to be like PR departments involved and they're going to control how that marketing looks. They're going to want it to look a certain way. So if my only sort of avenue to let people in is going to be the behind the scenes stuff, to like give people that little window. Otherwise, everything else is going to be under lock and key. So,
yeah. And what about podcasting? Let's talk about podcasting for a bit here. Would you ever consider starting like your own podcast, maybe like a filmmaking podcast? And what would you call it?
I actually did a podcast with my ex-wife. Yes, I have one of those. She's lovely. We did a podcast called, it was her idea, called I Wrote You a Story. And what we basically did, because we both loved writing so much, is we would invite somebody on that was a writer or of any kind of form, like poetry, short form, script, whatever, novelists, and we would talk to them about writing, and then there would be a prompt, and they would have had to have written a short story. And so like we would read one like an audiobook style, and they would read theirs audiobook style. And that was really, really fun. And, like most people, we got it kicked off during the pandemic when everybody was like kind of sitting on their hands looking for something to do. So we got like the first like season and a half like recorded pretty quickly. But then it never got finished. But that was a really fun podcast. Anything that allows people to be creative, I think, is fun. Because I think that, and this is something I try to be careful of when I'm doing like podcast appearances, is like there's just a lot of opinions, Yeah. And like you don't want to spend too much time listening to your own voice saying the same opinions. Like it's got to be something where you can learn. And I think that's like a more fun podcast.
So how many podcasts have you been on? Like other people's podcasts?
Other people's, yeah. Mostly to promote films or talk about filmmaking. So maybe like 15, 20 or something at this point.
Oh, wow. That's a good amount.
Yeah.
So you're experiencing this, man. This is
some of them never come out.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, this is coming out.
Yeah.
This one is definitely coming out.
Yeah.
And then make sure to subscribe. Because it's coming out, and I try to put all my podcasts out there just because we have this beautiful studio, man, and might as well start my own podcast and put them out there.
That's like when I heard you were doing a podcast, and I looked it up, and I was like, oh, he's doing a podcast. Like that's real. Like okay, yeah. It's a different level.
Legit. It's legit. Yeah, we're trying to I'm just trying to do cool things, man, and I love what I do as well. So why not start a podcast and bring people on like you and other creators, other producers, and just like I want to hear about their stories and like why they're passionate and how they do things.
This is like by far like the coolest space that I've ever done a podcast in. This is easily like the coolest setup. So
you hear that? Coolest space, West Coast Creative Studio. Check us out on Instagram. Check out our website, westcoastcreativestudio.com. But what will you tell your younger self? Let's say you're back in Yuma making Run for Your Life, right? Now you can go back in time. What will you tell your younger self to help you make that film better? Or just to, just in general?
Trust yourself creatively. Like trust your weird instincts. I think there's an urge sometimes when you're creating art to make what you are seeing around you or to make what you think people want. And I think that the only thing that people are going to remember about your films is the weird things, the things that are inherently you, the things that are so you that they're like surreal in the film because they only make sense if somebody knows you. But those are the things that are going to connect with people in the outside world more than any other element of your film is going to be like the weirdest choice that you are, in love with, that you think is almost too weird for the movie. Like to this day, like the strange elements of my films, when people like general audiences, to be honest, I don't have a lot of like rave reviews over my movies. I'm still getting good at them. But the people who do give me rave reviews, I get them in my inbox, and it's from people who found me, who live in the Midwest, who I've never met in my life, who find the movie, and the weird thing that I did in there that was inherently mine touched them. And they send me a message and they're like, this is my life too. And like, or this, I understand this. This was my favorite part. It's always the weird shit. And that like, it really emboldens me to like lean into those weird choices, lean into the things that are uniquely you as an artist, because that's the thing that somebody's going to remember. It's not the rest of it that is the structure they're used to. It's the thing that's you. So I would grab that little shithead and tell him that back then. Yeah.
A little shithead indeed. Man, dude, well, thanks for coming to the studio, man, and for coming on my podcast and just telling us your story.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. Guys, thanks for watching. And Christopher Sheffield, check him out. Is there anything else you want to promote?
If you guys want to follow along, just Instagram is where I do most of my best work. So Chef Shoots Indie on Instagram. I do a lot of stuff on there. I also I love having conversations with other artists and filmmakers, and I love, if you can't tell, I love giving advice. So if you've got questions and like want to know how things work, or you want me to like check out something, or like you want advice, if I have any to offer, like send me messages on Instagram, like talk to me, interact with me on my page, and I will answer you, and I will try to give you the best advice that I can. Or if I don't know, I'll send you to somebody who does, because I got a nice big network of people who love doing this and who don't, who like to lead with kindness in their life. So,
You know what? I think we should have you back on here later on and see how it's going.
oh yeah. I mean, even after November when the film comes out, I can come back on and I could do a whole podcast just talking about stories of making that movie because it was a journey. So,
and I love your stories. I love your storytelling. So once again, man, thanks for coming on to the podcast, and I'm looking forward to having you back.
Oh yeah, looking forward to coming.
All right, thanks.
Bye guys.